Hey guys, welcome to this Apata Brand Boxing podcast brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast and you too can get 40% off selected brands. Well, the OG of YouTube boxing niche, it joins me today. BT, Brendan Taylor from True School Sports. How are you?
I'm exceptional, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been following you now for a minute. I mean, I could remember you back in the day when YouTube was kind of this wasn't stuff that people did for a living.
No.
And you've kind of carved out your own little niche here, man. And and the credit to you, you did it when you were very young, and this was very, very kind of native to everybody. When did you start? And give me a little bit of backstory of who you were growing up and how you got into this.
Oof, okay. Basically, I grew up, as a fan of the sport. My dad, he put me in front of the TV when I was like 6, and we watched Felix Trinidad versus Bernard Hopkins. That was my introduction to boxing, and what a fight, right? What a great fight.
Well, that's a good fight too. I'm Puerto Rican. It wasn't good for me.
Yeah, I am too. But I mean, I didn't know anything about boxing, so I was just watching it as a kid, not knowing much of anything. But that was my introduction. And then as a kid, I liked other sports growing up. I liked baseball. I liked basketball. I liked hockey. I liked to watch other sports. I was a casual box fan as a kid, but then I became a hardcore fan probably my adolescent years, when I started watching Pacquiao and Floyd and those kind of guys more. And then I would say my love for the sport really, really intensified about 10 years ago when I was 19. And I picked up boxing. I would just box to train. I was going through some things in life at the time, so I needed some direction and whatnot, some character building. So I went to one of the local gyms here in South Florida, a gym in a town called Dania Beach, Florida, where I grew up, called Canino's Boxing Gym. I used to go there and train. And then at the time, I wasn't even covering boxing. I was actually covering the NBA. Most people don't know that before I covered boxing, I covered basketball. So
I saw that.
Yeah, so around 18 or 19, I was a big basketball fan, and I had gotten an opportunity to do some work in the NBA with like the Mavericks and in the D League and whatnot. And that was kind of like, I consider that now looking back on it, like kind of my college or university, because everybody always says, well, you didn't go to college, BT, but that kind of was college, because I was in Texas. I was in another state. I was learning how to create content, go do interviews, be a media member. Now here we are. I pivoted into boxing probably about 1.5 or 2 years after covering the NBA, and that's been almost 9 years now in a row covering the sport. So it's insane.
Why the transition immediately? Was there something? Was there a particular event, or was it you got tired of the NBA, wanted to come back home?
It was a combination of those last two things. I got tired of like the politics of NBA media. They made me jump through a lot of hoops to interview the players, and by the time you interview the players, they're like very micromanaged in the NBA. So I just got tired of it, and then I had a chance to start covering some fights locally here in South Florida. So the first fight I ever covered was actually Shannon Briggs had a little comeback fight down in at the Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida. And it wasn't just a regular fight. Like, he fought Michael Morone, but it was an event. Like, they had like the heavyweight champion reunion thing going on, and like 20 ex-heavyweight champions were there, like the Klitschko's.
Is this televised?
No, it wasn't televised. Okay. But I had a chance to go, and that was the first event I ever covered, and then I never looked back. I started going to gyms. I started going gym to gym here in South Florida, across the Tri-County area, and I found what I love to do, and I haven't stopped.
Now, when you got into there, were you credentialed at that event?
I was credentialed at that event. I knew a guy who knew a guy that helped me get it credentialed. But
usually how it goes,
that's how it goes. You got to know someone who knows someone. So that's kind of how it went. But now, it's a little easier to get credentials now because I've been at it for a little bit.
Let's go back to that first time. The first real interview with. Okay, so you have an NBA player. That's one type. Okay, they're one type. They're micromanaged. They're not gonna say much. They're not gonna fly off the handle. Okay, they got to be very PC.
Yes.
You go into this realm of boxing. I grew up in boxing. I grew up in gyms. That is a whole different ball game. Okay. Yeah. They can fly off the handle with something very quickly that you didn't mean to say. How is it your initial first reaction with someone who was, they're fighters?
Well,
how was that?
one of the first people I interviewed was Shannon Briggs when he was going crazy with the whole "Let's Go Champ" thing. So that really was a big education on how to handle and manage a personality, because he's very, up and down, up and down. But I liked it. I liked the rawness and the emotion of boxing. I'd rather be that way than somebody be micromanaged and be told what to say with a key in their back,
Right. And that's one thing I noticed with you. And then just the short time I've talked to you, you come off as very genuine. I think that can come off to somebody and say, all right, I'm going to put my guard down with this guy a little bit. You're not looking for the gotchas. No. I think that turns people off. When you come across genuine like you do to me, and the interviews I've seen from you, that opens up the doors. So now, let's say Shannon Briggs, first big event you hire. What's the next step in your trajectory?
So the next step after covering that Shannon Briggs fight, it was just really starting to develop that rapport at the gyms across the local community. So the Heavyweight Factory was the first gym I started going to, which is where Shannon Briggs trained. At that time, Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield kind of helped out with the gym. So they used to just be there all the time. So I started interviewing them a lot, and that really helped grow the channel. And then it was like going to local amateur shows, the Golden Gloves, and just going to as many gyms as possible. And then after that, it was okay. Now I got a little bit of a rapport here in South Florida. What about covering fights maybe in different states? So then the first fight I ever covered that wasn't in Florida was actually Terrence Crawford versus Hank Lundy in New York City.
Oh, good one.
Yeah. It was a good one to cover. So I got
a
chance to do that.
When you get there, you get credentialed automatically. Do you pay your way, or do they cover expenses?
Well, no. In my case, I'm paying my way. So
okay.
It's a little easier now because I've been smart with my money, the little bit of money I make from YouTube. But in the beginning, it was rough. It was rough. Yeah, I couldn't go to too many fights,
If you could walk there or take your bike there, that would be about good.
Yeah.
But what I love about the grind is you didn't take no for an answer.
No.
And think about it. Fighters have to fight. In life, it's a struggle all the time, whether you're a club fighter, smokers, contender, going through managerial problems, going through managers, promoters, whatever. This is who you're cut out of. That's the cloth you cut right there. You are perfect for this kind of industry and this niche. And it's proven, over 70-some thousand subscribers, thousands and upon thousands and millions of views. Yeah. Here we are. You're now the OG, as I call you.
Yeah, the young OG.
It's BT the OG. That's what I call you, BT the OG.
I appreciate
it. Because you're there. Anytime you get on YouTube, you're on my feed there. And if I want to go to get the good interviews, get stuff that's up to date, because you got up to date stuff. And not only that, you cover the guys like the Brandon Glantons.
Yeah.
Brandon Glanton, a friend of mine, great guy. And he's someone who's being overlooked, but you bring that to the forefront. I think that's what people like about you also.
I get a kick out of that, interviewing or talking about and interviewing the upcoming guys, or maybe some of the guys that aren't as sought after by the media, because my experience has been just, because I've been part of big fight weeks, big time pay-per-view fights. And I feel like it's not fair to the guys that, maybe don't have the biggest names to just get overlooked. A lot of times the interviewers just want the Canelos and the Gervonta Davises in the world. But sometimes the crazy thing is sometimes you go for the big names and you think those guys are the ones that are going to get you the views. And sometimes you might interview Brandon Glenn and he might say something about someone, and that because people aren't covering him, guess what? You get those views. So it's
right. And he was one of my most viewed ones. One of my shorts that I had one of the most views, because, and Brandon is a great guy. He's a family guy, not controversial, goes in, does his business, and he's done. That's what he does. And I really like him. I generally, and he's an exciting fighter. Reminds me of Evander Holyfield.